2018 is just 4 days old. The House of Commons is in the middle of a Christmas break or a holiday break. What better way to start the year than some political analysis from At Issue? We're taking the time today to look ahead and to answer some of your questions. Yes, actual questions by you. Andrew, Chantal, and Althea are all here at the table in Toronto. So we put a call out. We got lots of different questions. And we've just chosen these. It's not because they're the best or the worst or anything. They're just the ones that I found interesting. I'm going to start with Austin Stanton, who tweeted in this question, asking, what will be the biggest issue for the Trudeau government in 2018? And he offers, although you don't have to go along with these, NAFTA negotiations, the opioid crisis, or legal weed. Althea, you want to kick it off?
NAFTA.
NAFTA.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's the one thing that is still lingering on the radar. The government is trying its best to make sure that status quo is maintained. The Trump administration seems to be, by all indication, not really interested in making a deal. And so I think there will be some sort of resolution to the whole NAFTA issue, whether it's they dump it completely and we start with a bilateral agreement, or they just kind of like let it way by the wayside. We'll see.
I think both. People are prepared now for the NAFTA story to not end well.
Yeah.
And I think that's help to the government. Also criticism about the approach. While there has been some, it's not been really focused on what else would you do if you were them. I think marijuana is an issue that's got a lot of traction on the ground. Lots of people watching. I think the Liberals still hope it's going to end up being a good news story. And so they will be putting a lot of political energy into it.
I would broaden it out from NAFTA to include the China talks and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The government's got 3 different balls juggled in the air, and they're dropping all of them at this point. They're interlinked, and I know that they're concerned about not making one concession and one talk and another, but at some point they've got to bring these home. We've got to have alternatives if NAFTA gets into trouble, among other things. And right now, we're kind of the odd man out.
Except that there's overlap, you're right, but there's also conflict between all those deals, right? And I don't know how you
But I'm also not convinced.
Not as much as they're claiming. Sorry, just to finish point, it's not
sure.
as much as they're claiming, because some of the things that they're trying to hold on to are things that, in my opinion, they ought to be more than willing to get rid of. So, like supply management, for example.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that in the mind of voters, NAFTA and China are the same thing. There is a lot more suspicion and possibly a larger approval rating of the government not doing China than the opposite. And I note on that the both main opposition parties are not going to be pushing the China card because the NDP is against it and the Conservatives are not really hot on it either.
Okay, well, that brings me to a question from Catherine on Twitter, @Stocat1, who actually asks, will all the trade deals finally come to fruition with progressive elements intact?
No.
I would guess no.
No. I mean, there won't be any progressive elements in any China trade deal. Well, there won't be a China trade deal.
Well, there won't be a China trade deal.
There might be climate. That would be considered.
But there won't be a China trade deal, not in 2018, before December 31st, not happening.
Right.
And the progressive elements seem to be more of a PR thing. Like, you know, you have the Chile free trade deal, and it's non-binding. So how does the government justify that it can have, it says it wants as a baseline CETA, what it negotiated in CETA. But it's not going to get that probably in NAFTA. It didn't get that in Chile. So
I don't think they would have got it from the Obama administration, never mind the Trump administration.
Okay, well then here, where's this next question about NAFTA? Elizabeth Morris wants to know, is there a point at which Canada should walk away from NAFTA negotiations or give notice? Would Canada be better off with a bilateral agreement with the U.S., which is what you hinted at, Althea?
We should certainly be prepared to walk away. You have to be in any negotiation, and particularly in this negotiation where some of the demands from the U.S. side are just frankly crazy. They've got no business being part of any trade negotiation. I mean, a 5-year sunset clause, for example. I mean, exactly. So there are things, I mean, usually in trade talks, I would say it's almost impossible to have a bad trade deal, in my opinion. I know other people would differ. This is a case where you could. The other thing I would say is it's far from clear to me that Trump could actually pull the United States out of NAFTA. If you look at the constitutional separation of powers, he can give notice, but Congress has to pass the enabling legislation. And I don't think he'd have the votes in Congress, particularly when he's at 32% of the vote approval.
If you want Trump to run into Congress as an obstacle to getting rid of NAFTA, you probably don't walk away. You let them walk away. And so they can't use you as the reason why you're pulling the plug on NAFTA. But Canada walked away, so in any event, this is where we are. So you don't walk away. You wait for them to do so.
Although I wonder if Trump, just because of who he is, if he wouldn't somehow see that as as an interesting move and
But
gain some
Congress-
respect for us to,
But
if we did
Congress
it.
will, it's Congress that in the
Will
end
freak out,
will
yeah.
likely or not save NAFTA, not necessarily anything at the negotiating table.
But when this first came up, there was a lot of talk of, oh, they've got us over a barrel. How
Yeah.
can we possibly, because we're so desperate for NAFTA.
Yeah.
We have some bargain leverage, and we should certainly not capitulate.
Okay.
I
Althea.
don't think that the government is going to walk away, but the Prime Minister has already basically put his line in the sand on independent dispute resolution mechanisms. So there are certain things that the government has said that those are things that they would be ready to walk away from. I'm not convinced that a bilateral agreement would put us in a better position. It might make it actually harder for us to negotiate. So I don't think that that's something they've talked about it. The Prime Minister talked about it later in the fall. I don't think that's something they actually want.
No. Okay. Now let's talk about other people, other parties. Pablo Norm asks, what do Andrew Scheer and Jagmeet Singh and their respective parties need to start doing differently in 2018? Because we are sort of getting into thinking about campaigns anyway, to actually increase their odds of beating the Liberals in the next federal
Offer
election.
policy?
Offer policy.
Offer policy.
That sounds silly
this
to me,
business
Chantal.
of offering, how did Justin Trudeau win the election? It was just not just that he wasn't Stephen Harper or a
Yeah.
rock star. It was also that he was saying different things and promising things that people could say, this is what he's saying. You tell me what the Conservatives or the NDP's policies are at this
I don't
point
know. Yeah.
versus the policies they had going into the last election.
Although the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, when he was a third-party leader, did not have a whole lot of policy until
But
the
we're
few
asking
months
about
before the
2018.
campaign. So I don't know that you need to come out. Like, Jagmeet Singh has come out and he says he wants pharmacare, he wants free post-secondary
Yeah, well.
tuition, he wants this, that, and the other thing. I just think that you don't have a narrative about each leader yet. Like, you don't really know what Andrew
Yeah, but
Scheer's
that's the
focus
point,
is.
right?
and-
Don't they need
yeah,
to
but
start
I don't
doing
know
that?
that you
Talking
need to
about
do
next
that
year.
with fleshed out policy.
But we're talking about the
yeah,
coming
people can
year.
do that in January 2019.
The problem for Scheer is
It'll be a long time.
Yes.
the problem for Scheer is there's a couple of things he needs to happen that are out of his control. One is he needs the NDP to do a lot better than
Yes,
they're doing.
and they're
particularly in
worried about
Quebec.
that, yeah.
And secondly, he needs, frankly, a bad economy. It's really hard to displace a sitting government when the economy is doing as well as it is at this moment. I absolutely agree, though, that he's got to start fleshing out policy and got to start moving away from the Harper-style populism. I mean, he has to some extent, but I think there's a clear opening for him to adopt a more genial style, but also a more substantive style. There's a bunch of center-right voters out there who voted for Chrétien and Martin when they were tackling the deficit. They went with Harper for a while until he just became too annoying for them to stick with. But they're there up for grabs. They're not particularly happy, I don't think, with Justin Trudeau right now.
But I think Althea has something, though. You know, I get the policy matters, but one of Andrew Scheer's problems, and Jagmeet Singh too, is that nobody really knows them. And nobody really has a feel for them
And they're not going
even,
out
yeah?
there and talking to the public as much as they probably should. We knew more about Rona Ambrose when she was interim leader than we know about Andrew Scheer.
Yeah. Although they're
So-
trying to.
They're not really. They're denying media requests. He's not out and about as he should be.
Well, I think Singh has to get in Parliament. It's so hard for a third-party leader to get any attention from the media. You've got no control of the agenda. It's very difficult. One of the few places he has is in Parliament, and if I were him, I'd try and get there as
That's
soon as
easy
possible.
to say, though, because you do need to find a seat in the next NDP seat to open. I think it's in Outremont. I don't suggest that
It's possible.
I would take a pass on that one.
Okay,
not local and New
You should get
Democrats.
there as soon as possible, not as soon as impossible.
Okay, last one, and it's from Susan King, and it's an interesting one because I'm sure you all have different names. Let's hope. I would like to ask who the lesser known backbenchers are to watch in 2018. Who's quietly been doing, I don't think I can say this, kick-ass work or is poised to make a bigger impact? Oh, well, we said it. So is there someone out there that maybe Canadians aren't paying attention to that they should start paying attention to?
I have a couple of names. Marilyn Gladu on the Conservative side. She is a brand new MP from 2015 class. She got a palliative care bill passed. Basically, the Conservatives were arguing that seniors would not be choosing medically assisted dying if there was good palliative care across the country, and it's kind of rare for an opposition MP to get a private member's bill passed, and hers has. And I think that she's potentially a leadership candidate to watch. She's definitely taking more space than you would otherwise think.
She's very affable, too.
She's very
friendly.
lovely, and she's funny. She used to be a stand-up comic. Raj Grewal, he's the Liberal MP that possibly might face off against Jagmeet Singh in Brampton East.
Yeah.
Another Sikh who's lovely, young, I think he's under 30 or around there. So that's somebody else to watch. And then if I'm going to pick a New Democrat, I just want to say David Christopherson, because the man does not get enough love. He's one of these old school New Democrats who's always
been there
angry,
forever.
but does good work. And, you know, he deserves to get some kudos.
I'm not going to go down a list of
No, you don't
three,
have to. You don't have to.
But I will name two names, and I'm going to cheat too. The first name is Romeo Saganash from the NDP because he's been a force in pushing for the Indigenous issues, and he has a great government across from him because they did make a lot of promises, and I think it's important to keep their feet to the fire. He's been doing a great job on that. And I picked a Conservative senator. Claude Carignan for his bill on which is now a law on protecting journalism sources, which was a really important law. Interesting that it came from the Senate and the Conservative, and it became a law.
I don't think a senator can be a backbencher, though. I think
what
you've technically cheated. Cheating. Fine, I'll let it go.
I'll just go with the verdict of his fellow parliamentarians, and that's Garnet Genuis, the Conservative MP, who was elected by his peers as Parliamentarian of the Year. Very young, I think he's 30 years old. Very talkative. I think he's the second most most speeches in Parliament in the last past year, and very ideological. When I say that, I mean it as a compliment. That he's somebody who wants the
Of course you do.
He's somebody who wants the Conservative Party to stand for something, and we need more people like that. But for somebody who is so young and so ideological to also be able to work across party lines and have the respect and support of other parliamentarians says something about him as well.
He's very collegial.
Do you know all of the MPs? Like, I am still at the point where I see a face every once in a while, and I have no idea who that person is. You're probably better than the rest of us.
I met a woman MP, a Liberal, at the Liberal caucus meeting, and I had no idea she was elected. Well, there were so many new MPs in 2015.
We've got 2 years to go.
This is obviously not a comprehensive list because... Yes,
we'll do that trivia game, Lester. Okay, thank you all.
We have failed that quiz on cabinet ministers in the past.
Okay, thanks everybody.